I've been on the New York City NYU campus this semester and want to focus on Washington Square Park for my place project to learn more about the area I see every day. The phrase "stolen land" was spray painted onto the Washington Square arch following the death of George Floyd and the increasing calls for justice through movements such as Black Lives Matter. Given the current divisive political climate, our country is suffering from increased racism and xenophobia, along with many other forms of discrimination. At the root of these problems lies the questions: whose land is this anyway? Does it belong to one group of people more than to others? What gives them the right to claim it? The stolen land spray painted on the arch represents that the United States was originally inhabited by Native Americans, yet so many people today behave as if it solely belongs to white people and upper-class citizens, who are somehow entitled to trample on the rights of others. For my place project, I would like to examine Washington Square Park in 3 different time periods and answer the question, who used to inhabit this area? I would like to create a video screening of the history of Washington Square Park on the Washington Square Arch. I would focus on 3 different time periods and ask the question of who has lived in this area and what did they use this land for. I think the perfect location to present my project would be on the arch because it signifies the entire park and is a place where many people express their emotions towards the government and New York City. While I would love to be able to successfully fulfill my project proposal, there will be some hurdles. I think the biggest challenge I'd encounter would be to project my video onto the Washington Square Arch. I would have to contact New York City government park officials to see if this would be possible. If I could not project it onto the arch, I could always present it in the classroom and display pictures of the arch in the background. This is how I would set it up. I would use a projector and present my PowerPoint consisting of my images of the different time periods. As my images would project onto the arch, I would analyze them and explain their significance to my project and go into more detail about the different time periods I have chosen. For the 50th anniversary of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s last speech, I have been to the mountaintop. New York City projected images of MLK onto the Washington Square Arch. Mayor Bill de Blasio held the event on April 3, 2018. I would love to project my project onto the arch in a similar way and have the images of the past really come to life through the arch itself. Images have been projected onto other monuments across the world. For example, in Paris, images are projected onto the Arc de Triomphe during New Year's Eve celebrations. In 2018, the theme was fraternity, a remembrance of the 70th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and 230 years since the Declaration of the Rights of Man and of the Citizen. During this event, Harris hosted a beautiful projection onto the Arc, and I would love for my images to also be displayed that way. Following the murder of George Floyd at the hands of police, protests broke out across the country. In this image, the face of George Floyd, along with the words "Black Lives Matter," are projected onto the base of the statue of Confederate General Robert E. Lee in Richmond, Virginia. I researched different groups of people who lived in the Washington Square Park, Greenwich Village area, and after looking at various sources and talking to an NYU librarian, I honed in on 3 different time periods that I found interesting and significant. I chose the 1600s, 1840s, and present day. I chose the 1600s because during this time, the land belonged to American Indians. This connects to the phrase "stolen land," as the tribe who occupied the land was soon displaced. The 1840s were also interesting because during this time, the area around the park went through a transformation, which, again, displaced people who used to live here. The present time shows the park as it is today, a vital part of the NYU experience and a place of expression for artists, activists, and many others. In the 1600s, the Native American Lenape tribe occupied the Washington Square Park area and used it as a gathering place and cultural hub where they would trade goods, partake in games, and play music. When the Dutch first arrived in Lower Manhattan in 1624, they had a peaceful relationship with the Lenape. But as time progressed, the Dutch started controlling the land. Many believe that Lenape sold Manhattan to the director of the settlement, Peter Minute, for $24 at the time. The Lenape had a different interpretation of ownership and did not expect the Dutch to completely take over. They thought they would be sharing the land with them. Although there was no historical evidence that the Lenape made a deal with Peter Minute, we do know that the Dutch took ownership of the land with or without a sale. Violence erupted when the Lenape struggled to maintain their home, and by the early 1700s, the few Lenape people who survived were forced to leave Manhattan. I want to include this timestamp in my project because it connects the idea of stolen land and how the Dutch invaded the Lenape's home and completely took over. In the late 1830s and 1840s, New York City's elite started constructing lavish mansions, sprawling from the south end of the park to the north. As the years went on, more and more wealthy people moved into the neighborhood. In his novel, Washington Square, Henry James wrote that the square displayed a, quote, riper, richer, more honorable look, the look of having had something of a social history, end quote. I decided to look more into this time period because I'm curious to how the elite turned the area into a posh community. The image displayed on the slide is a picture of Washington Square Park after the death of George Floyd. Washington Square Park is considered NYU's quad and is home to many students and upper-class citizens, as it is a nicer area with coveted green space. As many of us saw after the announcement that Joe Biden is the United States' new president-elect, the park was filled with people, cheering and celebrating. Washington Square Park has become an area where people express their emotions and comment on the government and social issues. I'd like to examine the political aspect of the park and look into how the park has transformed to what it is today, with the addition of NYU and wealthier citizens moving in. To find the 3 different time periods, I used the NYU library database and contacted an NYU librarian. But if I were to continue my research, I would keep browsing NYU's resources and look for reliable articles online. I plan to use Chicago style for my citations and will also use Noodle Tools, an online citation generator and organizer, to keep all my work organized. Noodle Tools has online note cards where you can link your note cards to each source, so I will use that to keep everything in order. I decided to use Noodle Tools because we use it at my high school and I always found it to be very helpful. I'm familiar with its functions and believe that it would be the best tool to keep all my work and ideas organized for this project. If I were to fully develop this project, I would further research the time periods and continue to contact NYU librarians and search the NYU database and other online resources. I would also contact park officials to see if I could project my work onto the arch. For my work, the class can connect the past of Washington Square Park to the modern-day stolen land movement and see how the park has changed throughout the years. We're all NYU students, and while not everyone can be on campus right now, it is important to know our surroundings and the history of how we came to be. Here is my works cited, and thank you.